What's up, guys? Today I want to walk us through an exercise of memorizing and meditating on scripture, as well as being present. There's a story that I'm going to read in a second of just how present Jesus was. And if we want to be like Jesus, and we want to be this non-anxious person, if we want to be this person who is available to others, someone who exudes love and laughter and joy, as well as like proper sorrow and sadness, if we want to be like Jesus in all of those ways, we need to become like Jesus in how he lives, in the ways that he does things, and pay attention to his life and his lifestyle. So that's what we're doing with all of these practices, is we want to begin to practice Jesus's ways if we want to become like him, which honestly is what's going to change our schools. It's going to change our lives. It's going to change the world around us. And so that is why we do this, and that's why I am a pastor, is because I want to pass that on to you and help you and walk on this journey with you. And so meditating and memorizing scripture is so important, because if you want to know God's voice, if you want to just be going on a walk, or if you want to be in school, or you want to be waking up in the middle of the night, knowing that you just heard from God, one of the ways you know God's voice is by paying attention to scripture. And so often God will speak to us through the words that he's spoken through scripture. He'll remind us of truths. If you're feeling anxious, he'll remind you of verses many times. And so memorizing scripture is important for that. And then meditating on scripture. We read Psalm 23 a couple days ago, and in reading Psalm 23, just meditating on that. What is it like to be a sheep and following Jesus and being in his presence is so important. And the final thing that we're going to look at right now is how to be present. We can be present with God, be present with ourselves as we are right now, and offer that to God. We will find anxiety decrease. We can find even depression decrease. We can find ourselves being more joyful, more aware of what's going on, and in tune with God and his Spirit and what he wants to do. If you guys paid attention a couple days ago, when I was talking about anxiety, one of the things is presence. You know, it says, consider the birds of the air, consider the lilies of the field. And then Jesus says, are you not more important to God than these? And that's such an important thing, that when you're feeling anxious and your mind is just in the future and so far away, and then just running over and over again of worst case scenarios, he just says, stop and be present. Think about things. Be aware of the wind that's blowing on your face, and even be aware of your body. I'm sitting on a rock right now, which is so fitting with meditating on scripture. But sitting on a rock and just feeling the rock against my body, and to be aware of how I'm feeling, and to be aware of the sun that's beating on my skin, and just to feel that, to be present with ourselves. Jesus does this in Mark 5. He just got asked to go heal Jairus' daughter. He's a priest in the synagogue. And then it says this: a great crowd followed him and thronged about him. And there was a woman who had a discharge of blood for 12 years, who had suffered much under many physicians, and had spent all that she had, and was no better, but grew worse. She had heard the reports about Jesus, and came up behind him in a crowd, and touched his garment, just his garment. For she said, if I even touch his garment, I will be made well. And immediately the flow of blood dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of the disease. And Jesus, perceiving in himself that power had gone out from him, immediately turned about in the crowd and said, who touched my garment? Then he has this beautiful interaction with her, calls her daughter, and he says, your faith has made you well. It's this beautiful thing. But what I really want to highlight is how Jesus is so present. You know, he's in the middle of this crowd. Everyone's touching him. And yet in this moment, a woman touched his garment, and he felt the presence of the Spirit leave him and transfer to her and heal her, and he was aware of that. You know, he was present in the moments, and so we want to practice presence. If we want to be aware of what God's doing and how the Spirit's moving, we need to just be aware of even how are we feeling, how are we doing. And so I want to take us into an exercise right now. I want you just to close your eyes, and we're going to practice a breath prayer. And you're going to develop your own breath prayer. For me, depending on where I'm at or what I'm doing, sometimes I'll say, Lord, search me and know me. And that's just more if I'm just spending time with God and I want to have a dialogue with him. But more often than not, I just say, you are God and I am not. And I just remind myself I'm not God, and he is. And that's my breath prayer. And so when I'm feeling anxious, or if I'm just feeling stressed out, or if in any moment I'm just feeling that I'm getting lost in my own ways and not considering God in his ways, I just take a deep breath and I breathe out, you are God and I am not. And so I want you just to take a deep breath and maybe just practice that one first. You are God and I am not. and just release that. Breathe in, you are God, and breathe out, I am not. Just as it is an exhale of, this is not mine, but God, you are in control. And I want you to practice that breath prayer. And as you practice that, you'll find yourself just being more aware. You're reminding yourself of truth, and you are actually breathing in God's goodness, and you're releasing all of those things that you're maybe holding on to that you need to give up to God. And so as you practice that more and more, you'll begin to develop your own breath prayer. And maybe it's coming from scripture, something you've been meditating on. But in any moment, no matter if you're feeling happy, if you're feeling joyful, if you're feeling anxious and stressed, you can always offer a breath prayer up to God. And that is a great way for us to be present with how we're feeling and then to offer that to the Lord.